We are in the midst of a complete disruption of our financial and online institutions. It's already happening. Ethereum's market capitalization is already higher than PayPal, Disney, and Nestle's. Bitcoin is worth over $1 trillion, and the total value locked in the cryptocurrency ecosystem continues to grow at parabolic rates. It's an incredibly exciting time to get involved in cryptocurrency, as the big players are just starting to arrive, like JP Morgan, Tesla, and Square to name a few. And it's not stopping. Mainstream adoption of cryptocurrencies is just beginning. This is all very exciting, but there's something critical that's missing here, and that's the why. What makes Bitcoin and cryptocurrency so special? How is it so disruptive to these systems? And why are we even talking about it in the first place? Here's why. We're entering into the next generation of the internet that's going to change the very fabric of how our society functions globally. For decades now, we've been living in the age of the internet of information, where information can flow freely online and we can all benefit from the vast amounts available to us. Now, however, we're entering into the age of the internet of value, where real-world assets can be exchanged online in a borderless, trustless manner without the need for powerful third-party intermediaries. It's a time where everyone can prosper from the vast amounts of wealth that already exist in the world today, instead of a select few who control the flow of information. So to make this lesson easy and digestible, we split it up into 3 components. So let's take a look at the first layer together. How blockchain, the fundamental technology that allows cryptocurrency to function, is so disruptive and how it's changing our society now. So what's the deal with blockchains, and what's the problem they're actually trying to solve? Well, to answer this, we need to take a look at the infrastructure of the internet as it is now and take a look at its inefficiencies. As the internet functions now, when we send information over the web, what we are really sending is a copy of that information, a duplicate, if you will. So this works great if I'm sending an email from me to you, but it works really poorly if I want to be able to send money from me to you. It's critically important that that money is not simply duplicated once it arrives in your wallet. This is what's known as the double spend problem. How can we send money or any other asset over the internet without simply duplicating it? To solve this problem, we currently rely on third-party intermediaries to establish trust between merchants and buyers. So these third-party intermediaries, they ID, they validate, they settle, and keep transaction records of every single transaction that happens over the internet. These include banks, governments, record labels, and social media companies. Basically, Wall Street, big tech, and the government. This gives these third-party intermediaries an immense amount of power, as they effectively control the flow of information. They track every single thing that we do, they mine our personal data to do it, they undermine our privacy, and they funnel a disproportionate amount of wealth to themselves in the process. This further increases the social and financial inequality that exists in our society today. Specifically, it creates wealth for a few, but not prosperity for all. On top of this, their centralized servers that they use to control this flow of information, they often get hacked, and money can cost so much to send between countries, sometimes up to 10 to 20%, and plus, sometimes it can take days to settle a transaction rather than hours or even minutes or possibly even seconds on the blockchain. But what if there was a vast, global, decentralized ledger that ran on millions of computers that could replace this outdated centralized system, where every kind of asset, be it money, intellectual property, land ownership, personal information, or votes, could be stored, moved, transacted, exchanged, and managed, all without powerful third-party intermediaries. Enter the blockchain. So how does it work? Well, like we mentioned earlier, the blockchain is a vast, global, decentralized ledger that runs on millions of computers all around the globe. Now, since there are hundreds or even thousands of blockchains that are currently functioning, in this example, we're going to use the Bitcoin network. On the Bitcoin network, every 10 minutes, a new block is created, which holds all of the transaction information from the previous 10 minutes. Now, this block is encrypted by the Bitcoin software using a 64-digit hexadecimal number, and the miners need to validate this block by guessing the 64-digit number using mega powerful computers. The first to guess the hash number, or the 64-digit hexadecimal number, gets the prize, and in this case, the prize is Bitcoin. Once all the miners reach consensus that indeed the number was properly guessed and the block is valid, the block is then chained to the blockchain using data from the previous blocks within it. What this does is creates one mega secure, untamperable blockchain. If someone wanted to tamper with the data of a block to create a double spend, for example, they would need to go in, change the data from every single block that came before it across millions of computers using the highest level of cryptography available. In other words, it's practically impossible. So what does this actually mean? Well, what it means is that for the first time in history, people all around the world can transact with one another in a borderless, trustless manner. And what this does is actually effectively replace intermediaries like banks, social media giants, or record labels, for example. Now, instead of third-party verifiers, we're now using a immutable, unhackable, open-source computer program to authenticate all of our transactions. The power is taken away from the middlemen and distributed amongst the people. And the more distributed the power, the more secure the network. What this means effectively, and this is pretty dang cool, is that the underlying goal of the blockchain technology is actually to redistribute the power from these centralized intermediaries to the network of users that interact with each other on a peer-to-peer basis. Okay, so now that we've covered what exactly a blockchain is, let's move on to the next stage of this lesson, which is talking about what a cryptocurrency is. So a cryptocurrency is a digital currency that is secured by cryptography. Cryptocurrency. Get it? So there are literally thousands of them, and they all have different uses. Bitcoin is the most popular cryptocurrency. Some, like Bitcoin, operate like a currency. Meanwhile, others operate more like shares in a company. The more innovation that comes to the cryptocurrency space, the more use cases are being created for cryptocurrencies beyond simply acting as simple currencies. Basically, what makes a cryptocurrency special is that it's not distributed by a central governing power like a government, and it functions on a peer-to-peer decentralized manner using blockchain technology. They do not require third parties to function, only the immutable, trustless program that's run on the blockchain. Once again, wealth is not being amassed by these powerful intermediaries. So let's go through the third part of this lesson together, which is talking about Bitcoin. What exactly is Bitcoin and what makes it so special? Well, Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency that's run on the blockchain. If we want to understand what makes Bitcoin special, we need to understand the history and the evolution of money. So way back when, gold was used as a store of value because it was difficult to mine, difficult to refine, and it was finite. After this, they used money, and the value of money was backed by gold. So every time you got a bill, it was backed by a gold nugget somewhere that actually backed the value of that bill. So this is great all the way up until 1971, when President Nixon said, we're not going to do that anymore. So now money is no longer backed by anything other than government promises, and it's worth only what the government says it's worth. So this being the case, they can now print infinite amounts of it, which causes rapid inflation. To get an idea of what this inflation is doing, Take a look at this chart of the spending power of the American dollar over the last 100 years. So what makes Bitcoin so unique isn't the fact that it's digital, because let's face it, all of our money is digital these days. It's the fact that it has a hard cap, which means more of it can't be printed out of thin air. This makes Bitcoin non-inflationary. Furthermore, since Bitcoin runs on its own network, it's both the currency and the network. Rather than having dollars that run through banks, Bitcoin is settled on the Bitcoin network. This makes it way faster and in many cases way cheaper than the banks. So there you go. You now have a fundamental understanding of blockchain, cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin. It's important to understand these concepts before we invest so that we understand the value proposition that these technologies are presenting to us. Now, this really is just a brief overview to help you grasp some of the basic concepts behind what makes these technologies function. If you would like to dive deeper, we recommend checking out blockgeeks.com for a more in-depth knowledge on the inner workings of all things crypto. In the next video, we're going to talk about some of the basic rules that all new investors should follow when they're first investing in cryptocurrencies. So we'll see you there.